Hi, and welcome to the August Forum. I'm your host, Andrew, and I'll be sharing the stories of fashion industry professionals, creatives, and entrepreneurs about their journeys and experiences as they advance within this ever-growing industry. The August Forum, as an extension of the shop itself, allows you to have the ability to listen to those in the space. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, trying to break into the fashion industry, or just curious about the ins and outs, we hope these stories will help you to achieve your goals. In this episode, I have the privilege of having this conversation with Mitch Hammes, vintage curator, admirer, and owner of Single Stitch Madison. From selling to his friends out of his closet to opening a store in La Crosse, then to move into Madison, Mitch's trajectory has given him the opportunity to establish himself in Madison as a go-to vintage person and shop. During my conversation with Mitch, we not only touched on his journey and trajectory, but his perspectives of the role vintage plays within the fashion industry. We gain his insight in the growth of vintage and how vintage clothing will continue and forever emulate fashion and streetwear. From his anecdotes to his takes and perspectives, this conversation was truly enthralling, and I believe you will find it equally engaging. This is the August Forum. All right, so for today's episode, I'm joined with Mitch Hammes. Mitch, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. I feel like more people know you as Single Stitch Mitch than Mitch Hammes. Do you think so?
I don't know, probably. I mean, I got the nickname, I don't know, 5 years ago at this point, and I
Yeah.
guess it's kind of just stuck ever since.
I feel like at least everyone in our space knows you as Single Stitch Mitch. I didn't even know your last name was Hammes until probably like when I started researching you.
Yeah.
But before we get started, do you want to introduce like who you are and what you do?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I'm Mitch Hammes. I'm 23 years old. I'm the owner of Single Stitch. We were founded in 2000, I guess legally founded in 2020, but I started the business in 2018. But yeah, I guess I'm the man behind most of it, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna talk about a lot about, your journey going from La Crosse to Madison and kind of back to La Crosse with your other shop. But before we do any of that, what have you been wearing? I mean, we're kind of a fashion culture podcast, so I feel like it's pretty important to
Yeah.
ask that.
I mean, that's kind of a weird question when it comes to me because I do switch it up a lot. I'll wear like 70s bell bottoms and some cowboy boots one day and then Jenkos and some Osiris D3s the next day. But lately, I don't know. I've just been getting into a lot of like more for the past like couple years. I was focused a lot on topic, pretty much like what the graphic is and like the rarity of a graphic or the rarity of a shirt. And now I'm more focused on like the fit, how it fits me. Like I kind of got to the point where I'm like, I have 100 and plus t-shirts that all fit me the exact same, and like they're
Right.
all pretty much the same shirt with just a different graphic on it, to where now I'm kind of focusing more on just like styling differently and not necessarily wearing like the same oversized shirt every single day. So I've been getting a lot into like button downs, like short sleeve bowling shirts, a lot more like true vintage, I would say, a lot more like stuff from the 50s and the 60s, a
Right.
little bit of the 70s
Yeah.
versus I think for a while now I've pretty much been focused on the 90s. I'm kind of like switching over.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really evident with every time I see you, I feel like it's a whole different fit that you have on, or it's like a whole different vibe that you have. Is that something
Yeah.
that when you wake up, you're just like, I kind of want to try this out? Or do you
Yeah.
find,
I mean, yeah, a lot of it is like, and it's like an aesthetic thing. I have like Gorp core stuff that I'll wear, and then I'll wear like whatever you want to call it, the soft boy essential or whatever. So yeah, like I do kind of bounce back and forth, and like I think a lot of people kind of misjudge it as if like you have to have this certain style and like that's how you dress, when in
right,
reality you can literally wear whatever you want. I could put a skirt on with a North Face jacket and a
right,
cowboy hat,
I call it a
and
fit.
it might not look the best, but if you're like my whole thing is like a lot of people like misjudge people on stuff like that, where it's like if you're confident in something, you really can wear anything.
Right,
That's where a lot of it comes down to. It's like if it fits on your body, you can wear it. Like you can literally wear a trash bag if you want to. It's all about just the fact that it's like, do you care about what other people are going to say, or do you just want to do what you want to do?
right. And do you kind of have that mindset with like customers coming into the shop being like, what you're trying for them to do is like buy themselves like something that's going to give them that confidence that they're kind of looking for in a way, or
Yeah, and
hoping that.
honestly, that is kind of like that's how I kind of got to this point to where I started mixing up my aesthetics and kind of like mixing up my styles a lot. Is because I realized that working here, it's like you kind of do have to be somewhat of an inspiration to people and like how to piece things together and stuff
Right.
like that. So like a lot of me doing that was just like showing people like how to wear different things, and that
Yeah.
like you can style one thing in multiple different aesthetics, you know, like you can have the same jacket and it could be, you could be like emo goth one day and then a soft boy the next day, you know, like you can mix and match. And like I think that's like one thing that I like about it.
Right. I also want to know like what you've been listening to recently. I feel like you have a really eclectic taste in
Yeah.
music as well.
Um, let's see. So my music taste is weird because it's like I listen to the same stuff, but then I'll
Right.
find like a record.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just got like a Velvet Underground record that lasts like a week or two ago, and I listen to that, and then I dive deep into like that band. Then
Hmm.
I've been listening to like a lot of like 60s, 70s, like Velvet Underground, Led Zeppelin, just stuff like that. Then Bubba Sparks. He's like, I found this. It's like he's like a random 90s hip hop dude. And I found my mom actually came up at like I don't know if it was a garage sale or where she went, but she found it's like an old radio show and she got
Yeah.
all of like their old records. So it's a bunch of like 90s samples and stuff like that, where it's like a lot of it's all singles, but I got two Bubba Sparks albums and I like no idea who he was, but he's
Right.
so hard. Like, I love his style so much. So I've been diving into him. And then, but yeah, I would say the typical stuff. I like jazz too, like been getting into BB King,
Hmm.
Lead Belly, stuff like that.
Do you think there's like kind of a bridge between like your appreciation of like vintage clothes and then like your taste in music where it's like once you find something that you really like, you really want to dive into maybe a subcategory of it and kind of learn as much as you can in the like
Yeah.
period of time?
I mean, that's kind of just like how I am in general, like throughout life. It's kind of like when I
Right.
find something that I'm interested in, it gets to be a problem, to be completely honest, because it's very hard for me to just kind of like somewhat be into something. Like
Right.
if I'm into it, like I'm super into it, like
Right.
I'm gonna spend time like researching like all the members of the band, like what they
Hmm.
did before the band, what happened to the band after.
Right.
So I don't know. I think a lot of it is more just the fact that I'm just interested in history because my whole thing is like history is always going to constantly repeat itself. So if you can
Hmm.
have a good knowledge of what happened in the past, it'll help you for what's going to happen in the future.
Oh, that's
So I
fire.
mean, like I might not directly like relate to what happened to somebody, but it's like
Right.
I have no idea what's going to happen in my life down the road. So
Yeah. Is there like a certain band or a certain like subcategory of vintage that you've dived into the most that you were like surprised to learn a lot about? Even if it's like
uh,
Bubba Sparks.
I mean, honestly, like everything. I don't think every single time I dive into some type of vintage category, I find something that I didn't know about, and
Right.
usually it's like something that's pretty interesting. I think a lot of one thing that I think gets overlooked a lot is just vintage military stuff, like
Hmm.
just how I can't think of the word. Like they made all their stuff for use.
Right.
Like military stuff was made for it had a use for like every pocket had a use on those pants or on that
Right.
jacket. Where nowadays like it's seemed as more as like a fashion thing.
Hmm.
But I love the fact that like a lot of the stuff that is nowadays seen as a fashion trend was made for a
Like
single use, you
right.
know? Like
I think we were talking about that yesterday. You mentioned even with the Carhartt double knees, like the double knee was a thing so that they could put padding in it, and now it's like this thing where it's like,
it's like a
oh, it's just cool.
reconstructive thing. Yeah. So
Right.
you have double layers because it's a construction pant, and a lot of people doing construction are constantly on their knees. So
Right.
it's so you don't wear through so easily.
Right.
And nowadays, yeah, it's a fashion thing.
It's kind of. Do you think that like at one point we're gonna see different things? I mean, again, you say history repeats itself. You think that there's gonna be other things that see as like not quote unquote fashion items become into this like trendy kind
Oh,
of like
100%.
yeah,
100%. Like there's no way you can't say that. Like think about right now, like put 5 years ago.
right.
If you saw somebody wearing bell-bottom flares, like
Hmm.
that wasn't something where it was like normal for people to
No.
wear it. Nowadays you got people wearing it all the time, you know, like
Right.
that's one of our best sellers. So it's like to say like I mean, for me, I can even say that myself. It's like when I first started doing like the whole Janko thing, you know, like I've
Right.
been collecting like Jankos and like baggy wide skate stuff, like Y2K skate gear for 4 years. And like when I first started buying it, people were giving it to me. Like
Mm.
people were giving me Jankos because they were just like, what are like these are just
Right.
like they're never gonna come back. But like I don't doing this for as long as I have, you realize like it's about every 20-ish years, like everything comes back, you know?
Hmm.
Like when I first started this, like 70s band tees were super hot.
Right.
Like these band tees were really hot. And nowadays, like they're not worth anything because like I always relate it to like collector cars where it's like there will always be collector cars. Like that is never going to be something that goes away. But what kind of cars that are collectible is always
Hmm.
going to be changing.
Hmm.
So it's like it's crazy to us because like I think about it and it's like in 20 years from now, like the stuff that I wore when I was like in middle school is what's going to be considered vintage.
Right.
So it's all and like a lot of people like it's just all based off of nostalgia. So
Yeah.
it's like you get to a point to where like once somebody reaches 60, 70 years old, like they don't have any needs to buy a vintage t-shirt anymore.
Right.
Which is why like that 70s to like 70s, 80s bands are going down in price. And now like the early 2000s hip hop stuff is going up. It's like, it's just appreciation. And like the appreciation is always going to change. Like the main, like your 25 to 30-year-old group is like, that's the people that are going to spend the most money at that point. Like they're in the position in their life where they're able to spend money on things that isn't super isn't like home goods and like family stuff, you know? It's like when they're
Right.
down to spoil themselves and like that's what they want. It's like they want that nostalgic feeling of buying the stuff that they wore as a kid or they always wanted when they were a kid.
Hmm.
And like as they get older, new people replace them. And what
Right.
the things that the things that they're nostalgic to are always changing. So like the way I see it is like this vintage is never gonna be done with now that it's
No.
here.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of touched on like a little bit about your journey from like, I mean, what I got to learn a little bit more is that you started like selling stuff off your driveway to like having to open up like a space to literally like fit all the stuff that you have. Like, what has been your journey so far from doing that to now having two stores in Wisconsin?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it started in high school. Like I always just went and thrifted for myself. Like I was like everybody else getting 80% of my clothing at like
Yeah.
Zoomies or like anything like that. And then it kind of just got to the point where like I've always just I hate looking like everybody else. Like I always have.
Right.
So it's like I realized that it's like I can go and thrift and find stuff for half the price. Like a lot of it was because me and my buddy Seabone were super into polo and it was like the this dumb stuff too, like the pocket polo, the
Yeah.
pocket just like with the little horse on the pocket.
Yeah.
I remember being like 15, like going into a Goodwill and being like, dude, like the purple shirt with the orange horse, like that's so rare. And like we would go to like TJ Maxx and get stuff like that. And then I remember like he found like Colin found like a really cool polo or something like that. And I was like, that's when it kind of just like sparked it where I was like, dude, you can find way better stuff at the thrift store that they made a long time ago that they don't
Right.
make anymore. And then it kind of just got into that. And I was buying my dad's old I was taking my dad's old sweatshirts out of his closet. And then once I like graduated and got my own house, like my buddies would come over to hang out. And like it just ended up like they were just chopping through my closet and just trying to buy stuff off of me all the time. And then it was like, all right, if I'm going to go out and spend all this time thrifting, like I might as well start picking up different sizes and like stuff that I'm not necessarily interested in, but I know my buddies would want. And then
Hmm.
so then I was doing Depop pretty much full time, working full time night shifts at the brewery as well. So I'd get done with work at like 6 a.m. I would drive to the thrifts. I'd get home at like 3, sleep till 6 or 7, and go to work. And I just did that like every day. And then it pretty much broke down. It's like, all right, I'm making $110 a day at the brewery.
Hmm.
As soon as I can get to the point where I can repetitively for 2 weeks straight beat that with my online sales, I'm just gonna quit.
Right.
Then I could like vividly remember like I sold a pair. There was like fire red Jordan 13s that I found at Plato's Closet for like $12, and I flipped them for like 275 instantly, like on eBay, like same night I listed them. And then I was like, all right, yeah, like this is stupid. Like, why am I
Right.
sitting here like wasting all this time making someone else money when I could be doing it for myself? And then so then I got an apartment and I like remember looking, I was like, I need an apartment with a big driveway.
Hmm.
I wanted to find someone with a garage, but I couldn't. So we found this spot that had like a 4-car driveway. We lived upstairs. We had like a group of girls that lived downstairs. And I'd pretty much like, I would let them come to the pop up and grab a few things in exchange for us like getting the entire driveway for 2 days.
Yeah.
And so then we would just do like a pop-up / like garage sale pretty much every other weekend. And then it was nice because we were right across the street from Viterbo, so we were right by campus.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just got to the point where like people were lining up in the morning to come shop, and like it just grew, it just kept growing. I never had any intentions of it growing. Like for me, it was always this thing where it's like I can make enough money to like buy my food, go have
Right.
fun with my friends. Like that's all I ever needed. Like I never expected anything. And then it kind of just grew to the point where it's like, all right, I'm making rent in one weekend if I got a store. So it's like I might as well just start looking. I was thinking about like a storage unit or a storefront. And then luckily just like in La Crosse, like storefronts are cheap. Like
Right.
you can get a 1,000 feet square foot or 1,000 square feet for $60 or $600 a month, you know?
Damn.
Like you can find stuff for really cheap out there just because it's a smaller city. So I kind of just
Yeah.
like took the risk. And like, I don't know. I like part of me, like I always say this, it's like I would pay so much money to go back and shop out of that driveway at my own pop-up just because like like vintage was just in a completely different place, you know?
Right.
Like like if you sold a shirt for $100 in 2018, like that was
Was-
sick.
Yeah.
Like, that was a come up, you know? And like nowadays you got people selling shirts for 3,000, and it's
Right.
like, so it's like I'd love to go back there. Like I don't think I had anything for over 20, $30, you know, like everything was just super cheap and I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was looking at pictures the other day and I had a table with Levi's folded on top of it with a sign that said $5 Levi's. Like I was selling Levi's for $5. I pay more than that now wholesale. Like, I buy them for $10 a piece for the store, $20 a piece. And it's like,
That's crazy.
but
I guess
yeah, and then it pretty
that's the
much built.
nature.
Yeah, no, I mean that was that's still my thing to this day. It's like I'm focused on quick. Like I want to move stuff
Right.
quick. Like I'm not gonna sit on stuff. And it's like I ain't gonna admit, like for a year ago, I was kind of in this spot where it's like trying to make as much money off of everything as I possibly can. But like that's because it's like I had people tell me it's like, yo, you have an official business. Like you need to start focusing on margins. And like
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a little bit, and then I realized it's like, yo, nobody's like it's just sitting here. People are complaining about how high it's priced. So it's like we're back now to just like putting everything out for like $30. It's just cheap. I'd rather focus on moving it quick and like I don't know. If you want to come in and buy it and resell it, it's okay with me. I don't mind
Yeah.
what I know what we paid for it, so as long as I can make more.
I was gonna say, like, you have, I mean, with you in comparison, I guess to us, it's like you have everything out. Like everything is just straight up out. Like that's what you,
Yeah.
yeah, your brand selection is like what you have is out. For you, it's like, man, if something doesn't move like as quickly as you imagined it, like what do you do? Do you just like take it home? You're like, no one's appreciating like any, like I'm the only one that really appreciates this. Like I'll
Yeah,
take it.
oh, for sure, dude. Like you'd be so surprised like how many pieces I take out of my own closet. Like I have to purge my closet like every week, every 2 weeks, because I come home with an IKEA bag of stuff and I'm like, I don't have room for any of it.
Right.
So I'll pull stuff out of my closet, bring it into the store, and it's like if it sits here and nobody's batting an eye, it's like, all right, nobody clearly appreciates this like I do. I'll just take it back.
Right.
But then again, like we also put stuff out to where it's like because we're also trying to like follow trends, you know? So like we'll
Mm-hmm.
try to find something that's like trending somewhere else and put it out and like sometimes it just doesn't move. So
Right.
sometimes we just bite the bullet. I mean, like pretty much like whatever just doesn't move, we just toss into this big pile that's our $5 pile for Maxwell Street Days. Like every year for that, we just do like a huge $5 mountain and it's stuff where it's like I couldn't get stains out of it, or it's got a
Mm-hmm.
hole that I didn't notice, or some of it, there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just something I don't think I could sell
Right.
for 30 or whatever, you know, like we try not to put anything out for under $30 in here.
Right.
So,
What was like the biggest or your most like your piece of clothing that you were like no one's really appreciating this, but like this is something I really do appreciate. Like, is there one
I
recently
mean,
that
I
you
have a
had?
few pieces. So like I didn't grow up there, but my grandma and grandpa owned like a dairy farm. So I was like pretty much there like 5 days a week. Like I say I grew up there, but like I didn't physically live there, but
Yeah.
all of my childhood memories are there. So like
Right.
for me, it seems like I grew up there. And it's like my grandma's like Great Depression era, didn't throw anything
Mm,
away. So they have like a full house that's just full of all of my dad and his three brothers, like all of their clothing from when they were my age. So like we dug through that and I got my dad's FFA jacket.
fire.
I got like my great uncle's UWL sweatshirt and it's stuff like that where it's like they're worth like the FFA jacket's worth $100. Like
Right.
any FFA jacket's worth 100, but it's like it's priceless to me. You know, it's got
Hmm.
my last name on it, so it's like
Right.
a lot of pieces like that. And then obviously like Jankos when I first started, it's like I was buying them for 10, $20 a piece,
Hmm.
and I had appreciation for them, but nobody else valued them the same as me.
Right.
So
But now that's kind of like shifted where more and more people are appreciating Chinkos and FFA jackets in general. I feel like that's something that more and more people are really appreciating and kind of like taking into account in their
oh
wardrobe.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that's what I love about like the past 2 years is because like it's to the point where vintage is mainstream now, and you have people who are showcasing these pieces where it's like
Right.
it's not that they haven't been showcased before. It's just like nobody did it the right way. And now
Right.
people are like making these super creative like Instagram reels or TikToks about stuff and like showing people like because I've seen a billion FFA jackets posted, but I've
Hmm.
never ever seen anybody show somebody how to style it until this year,
Right.
So I think it's getting a lot more educational where people are kind of like teaching people what things are.
Mm.
So instead of looking at something that's just a simple price tag, you're looking at like the actual like historical like the history behind a piece.
Right. Right. You touched on before where it was like you were talking about nostalgia and kind of interacting with this nostalgia, and that's how vintage will truly never die because there's always gonna have this sense. Everyone's gonna have this sense of nostalgia in whatever era of vintage that they're shopping at. What has that been like for you, where you kind of work with your own nostalgia every single day?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that's kind of hard as like a store owner is like realizing that like just because it's something that you were into, like that doesn't mean that everybody else is going to be into it. So like,
Right.
well, I don't know. I mean, I just think of like what TV shows were on as a kid. Like my favorite thing is like when you put a shirt out and somebody picks it up and it's like one of those memories you had tucked in the back of your head, but you like completely forgot it existed, and it's like that one we had a shirt. I don't even know what it's called, but it's like that show that we watched when we were kids with like that big orange bear. It's like this huge orange bear, and he
Oh,
like I don't even remember. Like I don't remember what the show was about. I don't remember what his name is. I just like remember something about like going to sleep. It was always him and like the moon and the stars. But like we
I
had a
gotta.
shirt.
I'm looking this up right now, bro. Yeah, I could like it's like in the back of my mind right now.
Yeah, like
Um,
somebody just we had a shirt and somebody picked it up and was like, dude, like I it
oh,
just did that.
Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And like it's just shit like that where it's just like you'll show somebody something and it's just like that instant dopamine, where
Right.
it's like you're like, dude, like I feel so good just because I like remembered this, like it's
Right.
just this like that's you unlock the memory pretty much.
That's crazy. I feel like that's what's always gonna be great with vintage, and I think that category of fashion where it's like there's always gonna be this sense of nostalgia that is gonna surpass like generations and generations. At one point,
Yeah,
like you said, like when this next generation grows up, they're gonna be shopping at what we were wearing in like middle school and stuff. Like that's gonna
yeah.
be like inevitable. But
I
is
mean, like
there
I don't people don't even know there's like baggy pants was like a massive trend in like the 1920s.
right? Oh,
Like
really?
people were wearing like massive like 30-inch cuff pants in like the 30s. Like everything comes back at some point. Like
Hmm. It's just all inevitable. It's just like what it's just a cycle, and I feel like a lot of people know that like fashion is a cycle, but I don't think they truly see it in vintage because they only see it in their specific era that they're shopping in right now.
yeah.
You
No,
know?
yeah. And I mean, it's also weird too because like I'm starting to realize now that like fashion, there's kind of like two types of people. Like you are either super into fashion and you can tell me each detail about every piece you're wearing,
Mhm.
or I could be like, yo, what kind of pants are those? And you're like, blue jeans. Like some people just like don't care, and like that's totally fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But like there are certain people who just clothing is just clothing. But I
Mhm.
think the further and further that it grows, it's going to grow into something a lot more than that. It's like just like with vintage, it's like there's band tees where it's like you could go buy one on eBay right now for $4 plus shipping.
Right.
But it's not going to be it's not the original thing. So it's like people are starting to get to the point where like they would rather pay more for the like right piece because they care about the history behind it. Like
Mm-hmm.
they care about what goes into it. It's the same thing with like buying a piece off a Sheen versus buying a piece off of somebody who was like cut and sewing the whole garment from
Right.
scratch. Like that's completely different now. To
Yeah.
where a couple of years ago, like nobody really cared, I thought.
Mm-hmm. I think that's just like where there's just so much stuff in the market at this point. There's so many brands, there's so many smaller brands,
Oh
there's so
yeah,
many
there's
things.
I don't think there's any market in the entire world right now that is as saturated as the fashion industry.
Right. And it's like, do you think that's gonna continue to happen, or do you think at one point it's just gonna like,
It's already crashing, dude. Like, look at all these big name brands. Like, how many, like, think about 10 years ago compared to right now.
mm,
Like, how many big brands were there that people were fighting over? People were waiting in line to get their inventory.
right?
Like, that doesn't happen at all, really, anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there is no Supreme. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even though, like, Supreme isn't really a big anymore, but there wasn't anybody that even replaced them.
Right.
Like, if
I
you
feel
look at, like, you think about, like, when we were in high school, like, there were these brands that people would fight over.
right.
That is not a thing anymore, you know? Like at least from how I see it, now it's more spread out. Like there's more like instead of there being like those five top brands,
Brands. Yeah.
now it's just spread out to where like which is a good thing, you know? Like there's more money going to other people and not just like the same couple companies. And I think it's a lot more original.
Right.
You have to be at this point. Like you can't just be like you can't just go on
You,
custom ink, you know? Like
and
you
just put
have
something
to
on a
like
t-shirt. Yeah.
yeah, like you got to be out of the box. Like there's way too many brands who don't realize that to where it's like if you're not going out of the box, it's going to be hard for you to grow because there's so many people who are doing the same thing as you.
Right. And I feel like with that, it's like there's so many different aesthetics of fashion at this point. And it's like there are more like leading brands of a certain aesthetic. There is now no longer one or two or three like leading brands in fashion in general. Like if we look at maybe more towards like streetwear, after Supreme, it was like Stussy for a little bit, but now it's like so widespread,
Yeah.
like there is no one streetwear brand that everybody wants. It's at this point is like they're all trying to be as original as they can be to try and separate themselves. Do you
Yeah, and
agree?
I think that's a problem that a lot of people have is like you got to realize that like clothing has been around for so long
Yeah.
that it is really hard to be original, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really hard to make something that hasn't been made before. That's why like my thing, it's like when I look at newer clothing nowadays, it's like I don't remember the last time I bought anything from the only thing I buy from a retail store is a vintage inspired item that
Right.
is so rare that I can't find the vintage one.
Right.
You know, like the Oakley chop saws
I
that
was
just
gonna
came
say
out.
the Oakley chop
That's the
saws.
type of stuff where it's like I will pay retail for it because I know that there is a 1% chance that I'm ever actually going to be able to find the original pair.
Mm-hmm.
But for pretty much anything else, I look at most things nowadays and I'm like, I could get that in a vintage version for half
Right.
the price. And if anything, it's probably going to be better quality and it'll probably
Mm-hmm.
fit me a little bit better, you know?
Right. So do you, other than like maybe the Oakley chop saws that I feel like we all were really excited when they came out, honestly. And you were like one of the first people that came in
Bro,
like
I was trying to get those like 6 months before they even came out.
you came in and you're like, do you guys you guys size 12? You're like, yeah.
Dude, like I don't that is like the one brand that I actively look to buy stuff is like vintage Oakley stuff. Like I
Right.
love that's like one brand that I love. So it's like and it's so hard to find. It's
Bro,
so
it
hard.
is
Like the
very
fact
hard to
that
find.
Rob has like a couple piece like a watch and like all these like how, you know?
I don't know, honestly. I was gonna say, is there other brands other than like maybe Oakley right now that you are willing to buy like more, retail and newer product of, or do you find that you really are straying away from that?
The only brands that I honestly really support would be Vial Files and Manic. And those are because they're like two of my best friends' brands, you know?
Right.
And I
Right.
think the stuff they're making is a lot better than majority of the stuff that I see in streetwear nowadays.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, honestly, that's about the only thing
Wow.
that I would buy from retail
Wow. That's
and
crazy.
socks,
It's
socks and underwear. Other than
I was
that,
gonna say,
my entire closet is vintage, you know, like there's
yeah,
maybe five things in my entire closet that is not 20 years or older.
that's crazy. You got an old closet. It's an old man closet right there.
I do,
Uh,
bro. I got
but
stuff in there that's almost like 100 years old.
Older than your grandma.
For real. That's like one of my favorite things. I'll go over to my grandma's house some days and she'd be like, I really like those pants. I'm like, yeah, they're older than you. She's like, no. And I'm like, no, they're literally from 1941. And she'd be like,
Oh.
"How- uh, where did you, she just gets confused. Like, how are they even still there? Like, how are they still wearable? And, and
Right.
it's like,
What
you
has
just gotta
been what has been like your favorite like come up more maybe more recently that you've been like, I can't believe I have my hands on these, especially now with you like true vintage.
Yeah, I mean, so to be completely honest, like it takes a lot for me to get excited over clothes nowadays because
Right.
I've kind of gotten to the point to where like I have most of the things I want,
Hmm.
especially like t-shirt wise, like I have the tees that I want and like there's definitely still a ton of stuff that I want, but it's
Yeah.
like anything that I thought was reasonable, that's reasonable that I could get my hands on, I feel like I've gotten most of it. Like there are still a lot of pieces that I want, but it's also one of those things where it's like I'm only going to get one or two opportunities to buy this when they
Yeah.
come up for sale. So it's like I'm not pressed if I get them or not. It's like
Right.
if I get lucky, that's cool. If not, whatever. But honestly, like lately, it's just been more about like home stuff, like good
Really.
furniture and like
Hmm.
old, just cool posters. Like I got a really good like 30s industrial fan last week that like the thing about like I just think it's fun when I can find stuff that's 80 years old and still functionable,
Right.
if anything like more functionable than the stuff that I could buy at a
Exactly.
store, like I
Right.
have like that the fan that I got, it's like a full metal fan. I know right now that I'm gonna be if it's still working now, like
It's
it's
gonna
gonna be
keep
working
working.
for a while,
Yeah.
and it blows hard, like the air is way better than any Walmart fan I could buy, like
Any box fan.
yeah, so and it just like little things like that are like honestly, furniture has been really big for me. It's just kind of like I want my house to look cool now.
Yeah.
So it's like that's just kind of what I've been focused on.
Yeah.
Uh, but then yeah, it's just like random things. Like sometimes it's just like I always think it's always way cooler when I can find something in the wild
Mm.
versus having to buy it off of eBay, Like it's
Yeah.
always way better like when I can find something for $4, and it fits me perfectly. It's like, dude, that's tight. Like
Yeah.
instead of having
Yep.
to pay $80 for it on eBay or whatever I'm like looking at. So
Right.
like that's the type of stuff that gets excited, like I get excited over. It's more of just like I'm just super picky at this point,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's like I have my closet's so big to where it's just like, do I need another one? No, you
No.
know, like
But let's move towards single stitch here. My conversation with Mitch was a unique and enriching experience. What made this interaction so unique was his engagement in our conversation. Mitch was someone whose anecdotes ensured the conversation continued to be engaging and enthralling. During my interaction with Mitch, who helmed Single Stitch Madison, we got to learn about his journey as he first started out selling clothes to his friends straight out of his closet. He learned that this was an avenue he could pursue and found ways in which he was able to engage with his consumers through pop-up garage sales to having to open up a space due to the sheer amount of product that he had. Our conversation further engaged in his own nostalgia with clothing and the current state of streetwear. We discuss how vintage moves through generations and how in a few years, what we saw as present fashion will be another generation's vintage. Our attention then shifted towards exploring the genesis of Single Stitch Madison and the niche obstacles that Mitch had when opening and running the store. We learn about how he curates his product and what he sees when he prices his inventory based on his consumer basis. Mr. Business Owner.
yeah, I can go on forever. I'm sorry.
I was like, I loved it though. You were riffing. I was like, damn, I'm gonna let this man just do his
Bro,
thing.
when you said a 45-minute podcast, I was like, I don't know about
No,
45.
yeah, when I said 45, I was like, Imma just see if that's what it's gonna be, but I don't we're not
Hey, I got all day, so we're
yeah,
good.
hey, I'm chilling, but let's move towards Single Stitch now. I mean, you had your shop in La Crosse first, but then you moved to Madison after that lease ended. Could you talk about what that process was like for you to move not only cities, but you have to move your product and, like, you have to start up all over again. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, so to be completely honest, like if I could have started in Madison, I would have. Like in
Right.
2019 when we were looking at stores, like I came here, but that was like pre-COVID when rent on State Street was like 8,000, 10,000 a month for just a tiny spot. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's way too big of a risk for me to take. So then it kind of, I mean, it just got to the point where like our lease was up and it was either like we knew we were moving, like
Yeah.
just the the whole situation in that first building, it was a great building, but it like wasn't perfect. There was a lot of
Hmm.
things that we needed that we didn't have. So like we were either going to move to a bigger space here or a bigger space like downtown La Crosse on 3rd or 4th Street, or we were going
Yeah.
to just try moving to a bigger city. And I kind of just got to the point where it was like one for the business, but two more for just like my personal self too,
Right.
just like not I grew up in La Crosse, so it's like I don't want to live there my whole life. I kind of wanted like a bigger change. And I think definitely helped me, like there's a lot more appreciation for the things that I appreciate here than there was in La Crosse.
Hmm.
Like no hate to La Crosse at all, like I love that place, but it's just like when it comes to fashion, it's not as nearly as big of a thing as it is here.
Right.
So like kind of just it wasn't like honestly it wasn't too bad. Like when we got this space, it was actually funny because we came here to Madison to look for we were gonna go view two spots and we went and looked at them. We looked at the first one, didn't like it at all. Second one, we had like an hour to kill, so we just started like walking up and down State Street to see if there was anything else. And this place like just opened up. I called the lady and she happened to be like next door. So she just like walked over and like gave us a tour. And like as soon as we walked in, I was like, yeah, this will work. Like this is perfect.
Right.
So like it was nice. There wasn't a whole lot we had to do. I mean, we just had to paint and put the racks up. And like the
Hmm.
racks at that point, it's like we I mean, like when we first opened in La Crosse, like we had plastic hangers and like the $12 Walmart racks. Like racks were just breaking and like falling over. So like we figured out like a good way where you can just make racks out of just like water. It's like pipe. It's just like plumbing piping.
Right.
And so like
Sturdy.
yeah, and so we just do that. I mean, it only took us probably like 2 weeks to get this place ready.
Really.
And then like the physically, and then a lot of it was more about just like, all right, making sure we're marketing the right way, like we're
Hmm.
advertisement, and then just making sure we had the right inventory.
Right.
I think the hardest part about moving here was honestly like just like figuring out prices,
Mm.
because I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to vintage. It's like for you guys, it's like you order off the catalog,
Right.
you're paying like your cost, and then they have like a suggested retail price to
Right.
where like so you know what you're gonna sell it for. It's like
Exactly.
for me, it's like I have to go out like I use like eBay or like random like online sites to just see what stuff is selling for. But like then
Hmm.
there's times where it's like I gotta realize like, all right, this shirt sold for 150 on eBay, but like some topics are just so niche where it's like sometimes I'll get a random metal band,
Right.
It's like, yeah, they're worth 250 online, but it's like, what are the odds that I'm gonna have somebody walk through my doors that actually knows what it is and appreciates it for 250?
Exactly.
So there's times where I gotta mark my prices down, and it's like you just constantly have to adjust pricing. The market's always fluctuating. It's like
Hmm.
there's certain things that we were selling for $20 when we first opened here, and now we're selling them for 50. And I don't have any like that's not my fault. That's somebody I don't know who manipulated the market, but the market rose. So it's like when people get mad at us, like Detroit's this year, like Carhartt Detroit's, like
Hmm.
last year we were selling them for $100.
And now,
This year we're selling for 200. And
right.
then if anybody wants to get mad at us putting them out for 200, like don't get mad at us, get mad at the people that are paying $300 for them on eBay.
Hmm.
Like that's one thing where it's like I can't put something out for $100 if they're selling for 300 online, because then one person is going to buy all of them just to resell them. And
Exactly.
that's not the purpose of our business. Like our purpose
No.
of our business is get stuff in permanent hands to where people who are going to appreciate it and wear it for a long time.
Right. I was gonna say we talked yesterday about like inventory and like how do you manage that, and for you it's like you get like a lot of shit basically, and then you have to kind of cycle through each thing and realize how much you want to price that as. Is that something you still deal with today, where it's like you're like always having to manage what you're gonna price things as?
I mean, kind of like for certain things, yeah, but I'm also to the point to where we've been doing it for long enough to where we know what we can sell stuff. We know we like if I've had this Marlboro tee and I've sold 20 of them over the past 2 years for
Right.
$40 a piece,
You're gonna know.
it's obvious that I can just get that's like a $40 shirt.
Right.
And then like, so a lot of it goes off of just like if I've had it before, if I've had something similar, like what did I sell it for in the past? Like,
Hmm.
and it's kind of just like, I don't know. At this point, that is one thing where a lot of people nowadays will find something and they think like, oh, like this shirt's worth 250. It's super rare. Where then you
Right.
put it in someone's hands like mine, where it's like, I've had 5 of these shirts already this year. Like it's not that rare.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the difference between like there's super generic vintage that they was mass produced, and then there's vintage where it's like you had to know the manager of the band to get into the back room so you could purchase this shirt, you know? Like there's some
Right.
stuff like that where it's like this is rarer than the records themselves or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I was gonna say with your shop, it's such a diverse like selection where you can go in and you can get yourself a vintage tee, but you could also get yourself like a bowling shirt that was like from like the 70s. For
Yeah.
you, like do you have like what was your biggest obstacle in terms of like curating that selection? Like what did you find was the biggest like trouble that you might have had?
Honestly, the curating thing, it's more about just like having price points,
Mm-hmm.
like having like when it comes to bowling shirts, you know, like a good chain stitch bowling shirt's worth like 75 to $100.
Right.
And I gotta like you have to realize that like not everybody wants the authentic $100 best of the best bowling shirt. So it's like sometimes it's about like you're gonna have to go out of your way to go find like kind of they're just not as crazy bowling shirts that you can put out for
Mm,
40 bucks, you know, or
right.
50 bucks. And like kind of having that price point for everybody. Vintage isn't really cheap. Essential vintage stuff is super cheap. Like anything
Mm-hmm.
that's just a daily essential. But if you want like a super niche, I want a shirt for I want a Blink 182 shirt, you know? Like
Right.
you got to think about it's all supply and demand. You know how many other people want a Blink 182 shirt? That is what determines the price for these things is how much the supply is
Mhm.
and how much the demand is. If 1,000 people want Blink 182 shirts, but there's only 150 of them on the market, that's going to put the price up, you know,
Right.
because you got 1,000 people fighting over these shirts. Where then you have opposite stuff where you got like a camel shirt, like a camel
Mhm.
cigarette tee. There's probably 1,000 people who want them, but there's who knows how many shirts, you know, like
Yeah.
so it's vice versa. It goes both ways.
Yeah. When you like go out source your guys' like selection, are there always things that you like repetitively get like, okay, I know I'm gonna get this because I know it's gonna sell.
Yes and no, because there are a lot of things where it's like a NASCAR jacket.
Mhm.
It's like for a while there was like buy, 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 buy. Like
Yeah.
everyone you see for this price point, like buy it.
Mhm.
And now it's to the point where it's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to foresee where this trend is gonna go. Like, is it gonna
Mhm.
be something that sticks around forever? Is it gonna be something that was just like a 3 month fad?
Right.
I mean, at this point, we got stuff that are trending for 2 weeks and then they're done, you know?
Mhm.
Being mindful of that as well, like a corduroy button up, any pair, just like a solid pair of Levi's, like that stuff will always sell. Like that'll always be like a staple to anybody's outfit.
Right.
So
No
yeah, and a
longer
lot of
$5 though. No longer
no,
$5 Levi's.
I know. God, I can't even. I don't even want to know what I sold at that pop ups for like $5.
I was gonna say, what was like the biggest thing that you learned from like your first order lacrosse to now single stitch?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it. It's more about I guess just I feel like we've touched on most of it already, but just like realizing to have different price points and like
Mhm.
my whole thing since I started this has always been like I would this is a store that I would shop at. You
Right.
know, like
Yeah.
there's nothing in this store that I wouldn't put in my closet. And that's how I started and that's how I try to do it. But at the same time, it's about realizing there's different styles than your own, you know,
Mhm.
and you kind of have to curate for all individuals. We've always just been t-shirts, sweatshirts, pants,
Mhm.
maybe some essentials. Where now it's like we're diving more into like women's stuff and like
Right.
femme tops and more just like honestly, it's getting more into like essential pieces than it
Mhm.
is graphic stuff, you know, where it's like a good fitting jacket, like a good, nice cropped workwear jacket, stuff like that. Like that's the things that people want. And
Mhm.
that's the things that I think people can justify purchasing
Mhm.
versus spending $100 on a graphic t-shirt that they're not going to be able to wear all the time
Right.
versus like a cropped workwear jacket that you're going to get 3 wears out of a week sometimes.
Yeah, but then there's always still going to be those people in that market for those teas that have those essentials and now are just like spending for that nostalgia that we talked about, or
Yep.
like, just having this statement piece that they get to wear like once in a while, but they still have that essential pieces in their wardrobe already. So
And
there's
that's
always going to be like a give and take with that.
yeah, and that's one thing too that I've noticed a lot after from like being in multiple cities. It's like vintage isn't one of those things where like you can expect somebody to just fully dive into it right away. You can't just expect somebody to like come into the store for the first time and then the second time they come in, they buy a wall piece, you know?
Right.
Like it takes time to grow. And that is one thing that I love seeing is the kids who come in and you can tell they're so hyped, but like they don't really know what they're looking at. And then like
Yeah.
over the year, they start getting a lot more knowledge. And then they're starting to bring stuff to us to sell or trade. And like you can
Mhm.
tell it's like I try to educate people as much as I can, but at the same time, like I realize that if they're into it, they're gonna do their research, you know?
Right.
Like if they're not, then they're not. It's like what I do doesn't really affect that. But just watching people like grow from like I'm looking for a Nike essential tee with like a little Nike hit on the chest to coming in and being like, yo, do you have any Tupac shirts?
Right.
And like really like diving into it and realizing why there is so much appreciation behind the stuff that there is, you know?
Well, for a moment, I think back before 2020, before pre-COVID, basically, there was still like a quote unquote, I think, trend of vintage where a lot of people were starting to go to the thrift stores and trying to find like these more vintage pieces. But then those people that saw that as a trend kind of faded away. But then those everlasting appreciators kind of shine through a little bit. Do you think that's what you're gonna see now is like where people will come in, get their vintage pieces, and then call it a day. But then there are going to be those people that will everlastingly like come and shop.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for years now. It's like the people who are into this strictly to just make a dollar, like
Hmm.
those are the people that don't last. And I've seen that. I've seen that happen firsthand. The people that are into this because they're actually into fashion and actually want to see the fashion industry grow the right way and go down the right path, those
Right.
are the people that are going to stick around, you know? And like
Hmm.
that's very obvious to me
Hmm.
about how that works. There are a lot of people who come into this just thinking that it's just for a quick buck. And that happened.
Hmm.
That was a really big thing in COVID. When
Hmm.
COVID hit and there's a lot of people sitting around not knowing what to do, like you had a lot of guys who were 30 years old, realtor guys, whatever their regular day job was. And then they saw this as like some way for them to just make some extra money. And part of it's sad because the whole market got manipulated during
Hmm.
COVID. People were just buying shirts for $3,000 because they had $3,000 to spend on a shirt.
Hmm.
And then everybody thinks that just because that one dude spent that much on a shirt, that that shirt is now worth that much money.
Right.
And it's like that's kind of what I like about right now is like the market is starting to correct itself and like things are
Hmm.
valued at their actual value,
Hmm.
not like not based off of what some rich guy was willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, definitely like there are going to be guys who stick around, there'll be guys who won't, and I love where it's at, you know? Like it's
Yeah.
getting more into this thing to where like you're buying something for the use. There's two things. Like if you're going to buy a wall piece for 250 bucks,
Hmm.
it better be a band that you really like and you really
Right.
listen to. Like if you're
Yeah.
buying a tee off the wall
Just
for
to buy a tee
250
off of a
just so
wall.
you can say you have a
Yeah.
$250 shirt or
Yeah.
because maybe you think it's worth 300 and you think you got a steal on it, that's not how this is supposed to work. If you want to do it, go ahead. You know, at the
Right.
end of the day, like I guess it's like people giving me money. So like, I can't really complain, you know, but like, that's not what I want my business to be. Like, that's
Yeah.
not how I want this to go. Like, I want my items going to end users.
Hmm.
I don't want my stuff going to somebody who's going to buy it and wear it for however long and then get rid of it. You know, like
Right.
this stuff is supposed to be like nostalgic enough to the point to where it's like, you value the shirt more than what I have it valued at.
Right.
Like that's the stuff when it's like you have some that's why I love parents weekend, dude. Cause like the
Yeah.
dad will come in with his daughter thinking that like, oh, this is stupid. Like, I don't want to be here just moping around. But then he'll find something and he'll be like, dude, I used to have this shirt. What? Like, and he'll buy it and it'll be like 50 bucks. And he'll be like, I'm never getting rid of this. Like this
Hmm.
is gonna get buried with me, you know? Like
Right.
we've had grown men, I've seen a grown ass man cry because he found a shirt in here that he said he wore every single day in high school. He wore to the point to where there was no graphic left on the shirt and his sleeves were cut off. It was full of holes.
Wow.
It was one of those things where he totally forgot it existed until he
Hmm.
saw the shirt and it sparked this memory in the back of his head that I don't know. I mean, like, was he crying about the shirt? Probably not. It's probably more about the memories that are attached to
Right.
that shirt.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
the same thing, bringing somebody that sense of joy and that like instant dopamine.
Right. I think that's a really good point, especially about Parents Weekend and just like the sheer amount of people coming in. Again, because we keep talking about this sense of nostalgia. It's like it's gonna keep happening. At one point, the daughter that was brought in with, like, his dad is gonna go to a vintage store, like, with her,
Her
like, kid
daughter.
her
Yeah.
daughter, and, like, she will find something and be like, "Remember this when I was, like, growing up and everything?" Like, it's gonna be, like, a cycle, and it's something really cool to be a part of, I bet, like, something
Yeah.
you really appreciate. But in the past, like, year, I guess, I think you opened another Single Stitch up in La Crosse with Danny working up there.
Yep.
Yeah. At what point did you realize that you wanted to go back to La Crosse and open up another store?
So we knew we were gonna move back to La Crosse before we opened in Madison.
Whoa, okay.
So that was always the plan, and honestly, it took way longer than we ever wanted to. Like, I
Yeah.
to be completely honest, like, now that I look back at it, I realize that I probably did it backwards, where we should have focused on a new store downtown La Crosse first,
And then
and then
Madison.
made the jump to Madison,
Yeah.
because, honestly, what happened is me and Danny both moved to Madison. The plan was
Mhm.
to open this store here. We were both gonna be partners here. And then as soon as he made enough money and had enough money saved up, he was going to move back to La Crosse and open up his own store,
Right.
which it happened, but it got to the point where me and him were just enjoying Madison so much that we didn't want to move back to La Crosse right away. It was
Mhm.
like, we just moved here. Like, why would we go back? I mean, honestly, like, I'm not really affiliated with La Crosse. I mean, I
Really?
am.
Yeah.
Like, but on paper, like, I'm not on any of the lease. Like, that is Danny's store. Danny makes
Mhm.
his money there. And that's how
Mhm.
we wanted it to be.
Mhm.
We talked about we doing partners, and like then you got to deal with percentages, and then like
Right.
my whole thing about partners that I don't like is somebody might bust their ass one week and one dude might be sitting on the couch, but the profit still gets split 50-50 at the end of the
Mhm.
week, you know?
Mhm.
So it's always just been like I want people to work for their money, and I just think that made the most sense for both of us, to where it's you go,
Right.
I don't have to focus on what you're doing. You just focus on that. We've been working together for 4 years. So to like I know I can trust him. Like I
Right.
know he knows what to do. Like I
Yeah.
clearly like he's been doing it here for how long. So like
Right.
and it was easy. Already being in La Crosse, it's not like we just started over. We didn't
Mhm.
start from scratch. Like we already had a following there. We already had established customer base. So it was more just like we took a vacation. That's how
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
Granted, it was only supposed to be a 3-month vacation and it ended up being like a year-long vacation, but yeah, I don't know. That's just how it went. And then honestly, a lot of it too was the fact that we couldn't find a space.
Bro,
We would have
okay.
opened up in La Crosse way sooner, but they did all this stuff with the lacrosse center and then they're fixing up
Mhm.
Pearl Street and like it's lacrosse is going to pick up. I can tell you right now that in 5 years, lacrosse, downtown lacrosse is going to be completely different than what it is now.
Right.
So it's like a lot of people know that. So a lot of these spaces that have always been empty filled. And we didn't
Mm.
expect that, you know, like we expected them to stay empty like they have been for how long.
Yeah. You don't really, like, split your time between Madison and the lacrosse store. You're kinda more focused in
Not really.
Madison.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I go to lacrosse every other weekend to go fish, and
Yeah.
then I just hang out with Danny for the day and just help him out when he needs it. That's honestly what more of it is. It's more we're both here to help each other when we need it. That's it. You know, like I don't want to make anything complicated if it doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
It's like I would rather have Danny with his own store for the fact that it's like
His
for what
store.
he did to help this store for as
Exactly,
long
yeah.
as he did, like it means way more to me that he has his own place and he's doing everything how he wants to do it versus us being partners and us like fighting over how things should be done and like if things should be done the right way or what's the
Right.
right way, what's the wrong way. When in
Yeah.
reality, just do what you want to do. I mean, like Danny was working at Jimmy John's. He's like he was my best friend. Still this day is my best friend. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, I found this thing where we can make the
Like
same amount of money and not
right.
have to do this.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just, I was like, I trained him for until he didn't need it anymore. And it's like,
Mhm.
he hasn't needed that for a long time. Like he figured it all out. It's the same thing with Carson. Like my first ever business partner was like my best friend. And I was like, yo, I found this way
Right.
that we can like make money. And now Carson's living in Phoenix, selling at Rose Bowl every weekend and living his best life, you know? Like that's one thing that I stepped away from it for a long time, you know, and I kind of was getting like just down on myself because I don't work with my best friends anymore. You know, like
Right.
that's what we started was like this thing to where we get to hang out every day. It's not even
Mhm.
work. We get to make enough money to where we can go get a couple drinks and buy our food and like pay rent and like that's all it was. And now it's like an official business. And like I'm able to provide for two of my best friends where they
Mhm.
have like a steady income and like they're not working some 9 to 5 that I know for a fact they never wanted to do in the first place.
Right. During our talk, Mitch and I delved into the small hitches he faced in terms of running a vintage store with a diverse inventory and product selection. Due to the nature of his business, the way he prices and brings in product is very unique to Single Stitch and his shop itself. We delved into the intriguing topic of personal work-life balance and how he manages to run and operate a small business. This is what made our conversation so unique, as Mitch delved into a personal topic that is integral to all of our well-beings. From talking about how to separate work and personal life to talking about how to grow as an individual or someone looking into the fashion industry, Mitch's anecdotes and perspective is candid and illuminating. In addition, our conversation expanded upon Mitch's opinion on the current state of vintage and the oversaturation in the current fashion market. But his take on how he appreciates the current state of vintage is very different to many perspectives of the fashion space in general, as he touches on how the market is slowly starting to balance itself out, making his perspective and his experience unique to him. So your mindset has kind of like switched over the years or kind of grown over the years of where it's like, at one point it was like, I'm working with my best friends. This is like, I'm just hanging
for
out.
sure, bro, dude. If you would have seen like how we operated in lacrosse versus how we would just skate in the store, and like people would walk in and we just wouldn't like we would just keep skating. How we even survived there, honestly, dude, like I'm so surprised. Still to this day, like I have never taken a business class. I've never taken any marketing class. I have
Right.
probably watched 5 hours total of YouTube videos to learn everything that I've ever learned about this business. So it's like
Right.
we just did it. Like we were just having fun, you know? And then like once we moved here, I was expecting it to be the same thing. And it was like a really quick realization, like once I moved to Madison, where it's like, all right, this is now a job.
Mm-hmm.
This is now a business. You really need to start paying attention to what's going on. It's fun. Like, don't get me wrong. I love it. You know, like I
Yeah.
love running the business, but at the same time, there's a lot of days where I'm like, damn, it was way more fun back in the day. But
Right.
you can't have that forever. We wouldn't be here if we were still doing the same thing. There's no
Right.
way. We would have had to close the store down forever ago.
So you still appreciate it at the end of the day, like you said.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one thing where it's like, no matter what, at the end of the day, that's no matter what I'm thinking about, it's still the fact that it's like I am used to work from 11 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning, driving a forklift around with a bunch of alcoholic 50-year-old men. So the fact that I'm not doing that anymore is enough.
Right.
That's simply enough. At the end of the day, it's like you can sit there and you can get upset about all these things that's not going your way. But I literally reposted something this morning where it's like sometimes you're so focused on the future that you forget that you're in the exact place you were praying to be in the past. Like I'm living out the goal that I've always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just like get caught up on things that doesn't really matter, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a
Yeah.
lot of things that people don't realize. I am a regular 23-year-old going through the same life crisis that every 23-year-old is going through, you know? Like I got the same thoughts that everybody like I don't even know if this is the right thing. It's just doing it.
Do you have an end goal at this point in time? Or is this just like you are just living your 23-year-old life, just going day by day, figuring it out?
We have goals that like we're focusing on. We need to get a bigger space.
Yeah.
For a long time there, like I did have a goal to open up a third location in Milwaukee, but like it's still on the radar, you know. My biggest thing is like I've been doing it by myself. Like I've had
Right.
Danny or Nick, but at the same time, I'm this type of dude where it's like if I want it done right, you got to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I didn't trust Danny or Nick when they were
Right.
here. It's more the fact that it's like I just wanted to do everything myself. It's like
Right.
so I've been doing I run the Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
I do my taxes, I
Right.
restock like everything. So it's like now I'm to the point where I'm realizing where it's like you need to focus on your social life. Like you need to go have fun. Like you don't need to be working 60 hours a week. Dude, I've probably worked 60 hours a week for the past 4 years straight. Like
Yeah.
I don't give myself any time off. And like this is the first summer where it's like chill. Focus on yourself. It's not all about the business. So it's like that's just like where I'm at, realizing that it's like you can put as much effort as you want to into the store, but you don't need to let it consume you.
So how do you separate yourself? Because like I mean, you go home, there's vintage everywhere. You go to work, it's vintage. Like you have to go and source, and like if you're going on vacation, more than likely you're like searching through what you could find to bring to the store. Like how do you separate yourself from all of that?
I mean, the nicest thing about where I'm at now is I've slowly been working on this over the past couple of years, and like I'm kind of the point now to where I have employees don't know if you want to call them employees, but I have pickers
Right.
who are going out and like getting us the inventory and I'm just
Mm.
buying it from them. So it's way nicer now that like I can wake up in the morning and I don't have to stress about going to get stuff. It's like
Right.
it's all just coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
I got to pay more for everything, but
But
it's not the end of the world. You know,
right.
it's like we're not getting anything for $2 anymore. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, we haven't for a lot, like pretty much honestly, since we moved to Madison, it's like a lot of it is more about just letting other people source for us.
Mm-hmm.
That way I can give myself time to just do whatever. Like I've fished every morning before I come to the store for the past month. Like
Right.
it's just about doing something that's not work all the time. And that's the other thing too. It's like I don't bring clothes home with me anymore.
Mm.
That's something I realized in lacrosse. It's like I had when I was doing those pop-ups, thank God I lived with Carl. He has Biophile, so he was screen
Yeah.
printing. I was doing my vintage stuff, and we kind of just like moved in. I was like, "Are you cool with us not having a living room?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "You need space for your stuff." Like we just didn't have a living room. We had two
Right.
bedrooms, our kitchen, and then we had a huge open space that was half vintage stuff
And
and
half
half
like
screen
screen
printing
printing.
stuff. And
Yeah.
then it kind of just got to the point where I get home from the store or I get home from doing whatever, and then I just keep pricing, or it's like I just wash, do laundry, and it's like I got to a point where I honestly was like driving myself crazy because I had no separation between the two.
Mm-hmm.
It was like my home life and my work life were the same thing. So like that's something where I realized that young, or I shouldn't say young, but while ago, to not like if you want to separate the two, you can't bring your work stuff home with you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like I like leave all my clothes at the store. I have my sewing machines and everything at home. So like anytime I need to repair stuff, I'll
Right.
bring it home. Yeah, I don't know. It's more of just a mindset. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
me waking up in the morning and like looking in a mirror and telling myself, you do not need to work today.
Yeah.
You worked all last week, you're caught up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's my biggest thing. There's no such thing as being caught up. Growing up on the farm, it's like there's always stuff to
Some.
do at
Yeah.
all times. You might have gotten done out in the field, but there's a flat tire in the barn that you got to fix. So it's
Right.
like that's kind of how it is for me. I got enough stuff tagged. I got enough Instagram posts drafted to where like honestly, I don't need to come into the store this week.
Mm-hmm.
Like all I gotta do is get this stuff posted, have my restocks ready for Rafe to put out, and that's good. But then there's parts of me where it's like, all right, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting at home and I'm like, I'm bored. So I just come
Yeah.
in and work. And
Yeah.
that's been my thing. It's just like the past 3 years I worked so much that I've lost a lot of my hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting these hobbies back, which is
Right.
it's just a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. It's tough where it's like I kind of like not feel you because I mean I'm not in the same position as you, but it's like when I'm not working or I'm not doing something, I'm sitting around, I'm just like I genuinely don't know what to do with myself because like
Same, yeah.
because it's like as someone that's worked since they were like 14, 15 years old, like just working, just making money and like doing all this. If I'm not like doing something that I feel like isn't like quote unquote making money or like bettering myself in the sense of like I'm working towards something, I just feel like, man, I'm just killing the day. The
Yep,
day's like
I like could not agree with that more,
it's
dude.
like
Like that's like the hardest thing with me where it's like I've just been forcing myself to wake up and just get on the boat and
yeah,
fish. And
yeah,
like some days it's just super fun. And then some days I'm like, dude, I could have made a couple $100.
right,
You know? Like
exactly,
I could have
yeah,
went and like sewn in the basement and like I could have or done something, you know, like I could have watched some YouTube videos. I could have called my accountant and talked to him about investing, you know, like I
yeah.
could have done a few other things like that. But then at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know. My biggest
You
thing
have to
is like
separate
at the end of
yourself.
the day, when you're on your deathbed, like your only thing that's coming with you is memories. So it's like
Right.
realizing that like that's my biggest thing. I used to live my life by that quote, like to
Mhm.
a T. And
Mhm.
then once this whole business thing started, like I started finding all these different or just finding different ways to make myself feel good, you know, to where it's like,
Yeah.
damn, like sometimes like making money feels better than like going out and making a memory with my best friends.
Right.
Which I think is something where it's like that's just where society is.
Mhm.
Society's so focused on like making a bunch of money. And like I also think about like the happiest times in my life. I was broke, dog. Like I had
Yeah.
no money. Like when I was 17, living in my first ever apartment and my homies were coming over and we were just like
Hanging
going to
out.
house parties and
Yeah.
like doing stupid stuff, you know, like I had $20 to my name. All the money I had to my name was like to go buy a case of beer. Now it's like you're doing everything you want, but you're not feeling as fulfilled because you're not doing those things that are. I think I got to a point where I actually like I just lost focus on the things that I actually was supposed
Mhm.
to be focusing on.
Right.
You know, where it's like that's been my whole thing my whole life is I grew up watching Fantasy Factory, like Rob Dyrdek, like that whole
Yeah.
shit is like still, dude, like that's my dream. That is
Mhm.
my like dream is to have something like the Fantasy Factory where it's like I just get to fuck around with my friends all day. Like
Yeah.
that's what I do for a living. When people are like, "What do you do for a living?" I want to be like, "Whatever I want." Like
Right.
that's what I want to be able to say. So part of me is like realizing like how much money that would take, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like that's not just going to be free. Like you're going to
Right.
have to work to get yourself to that point. But then the other part of me is like you could have all the money in the world and you could have a fantasy factory and you could have a foam pit and all that, but if you don't got friends to hang out with and you don't
Right.
got people to like genuine people to be there with, what does it mean?
Mhm.
And that's like my biggest thing is just for the past couple of years, I've just been focusing on the store and
Right.
not meeting people. I don't
Yeah.
say meet, like I meet people all the time, you know, it's like
But
what
it's
I
just
do
like,
for a living, but it's like,
yeah, building relationships.
yeah, building lifelong friendships, you
Right,
know?
yeah. I think
Yeah.
you said something so is very evident with a lot of people even in society now where it's like, what used to be your core fun memories when you were a kid, when you weren't working, when you were dreaming of all these things and, like, wanting to do all this, and now, like, in a moment where, like, some of your best memories and most fun memories are, like, basically working and making money, and for me, it's like going to the shop and hanging out with Joel and, like, everybody else, and, like, that's, like, what I've some of my favorite memories recently is just, like, just doing that, and it's like
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where we're like we're also like in our 20s. Like I feel like that's a very common
right.
thing for people to think at our age. Yeah, I don't know. Like me and Isaac were just talking about it. It's just like I think it's a very common thing for people to get to this age and think of like, am I going down the right path? Is
Yeah.
this really what I want to do? And
Mhm.
I think it's super important for a lot of people to have that conversation with themselves because I think when you're like right out of high school, like you're super manipulative by other
Mhm.
people. So it's like
Absolutely.
that's how I think it's like a lot of it was like my whole thing, my whole life has always been like making sure I'm surrounding myself with people who I'm gonna grow with. Like I don't want to surround myself by anybody who's gonna slow me down or just is
Mhm.
like content with not having a lot. And it's
Right.
like I've always been like shoot for the stars, fuck the moon, like we're going for the stars. Like I want to surround myself with the same type of people. And I think
Mhm.
there was a period of my life where I couldn't find those people. So I said, like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it by myself.
Right.
Now it's to the point where it's like, duh, you need those people. Like you need
Mhm.
people like that to keep you going. And I think a lot of people get stuck in this spot where they just surround themselves with people who are honestly just putting them down the wrong path. You know, like I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people, they know what they want. Like they know
Mhm.
exactly what they want, but it's like if I go down that path, I'm gonna lose these people. And I think a lot of people just hold on to that for way too long and then they get to the point where it's irreversible. And that's something like
Mhm.
I do not want that to happen to me.
Yeah. How do you manage those relationships? At what point in your mind are you like, "These are the people that I know are gonna be lifelong and just, like, always gonna bring me up?"
I've been saying this for a minute. If I hang out around somebody for like 3 to 4 times, you know, and they don't talk to me about anything future related, like
Mm.
I just found like mega shout out to Isaac because Isaac's the dude who like made me realize this. We were talking one night and he's like, yeah, you just like can't really surround yourself with people who aren't goal orientated. And I
Yeah.
was like, dude, I needed somebody to tell me that like 5 years ago. You know, like I've always wondered why it's so hard for me to like I can make friends with anybody, but like for it to be genuine, you know? And it's like
Mhm.
so like if I hang out around somebody for like a handful of times and they're just
I'm just
content with
hanging.
where they're
Yeah.
at and they're just like whatever, you know, and it's like that's not like I'm constantly trying to grow. Like that's what
Right.
life is about in my eyes. It's like constantly growing and like getting better. That's why I love people who are like I really, really, really love the type of people who are not afraid to like call people out on their bullshit.
Mhm.
If I'm doing something wrong, like tell me. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a lot of like I'm the type of person I know there's a lot of other people like this where it's like you just need somebody else to tell you something.
Right.
Like it's not necessarily that you don't understand that it's going on, but it's like it's you can't figure out a way to word it to make sense in your own head. If I'm making mistakes, like I want to know so I can get better. I don't know. I feel like I have a pretty good like I can read people pretty easily.
Mhm.
It's pretty easy to determine like if they're that type of person or if they're the type of person who just will be content with a house and a wife and kids and that's all they need in life, you know?
Yeah. And yeah. Damn. This episode has not gone at all
Yeah, I
that
just thought
line.
about it. I'm like, bro, we're talking about the most random shit, but
I was
whatever.
like I was like looking at it, I was like, "Oh my god, these some of these points like we just did not hit." But I love that, bro. This is good.
I'll
Uh
talk. I can just rant.
yeah,
My brain's not very good at like focusing on like one thing.
yeah.
So it'll just keep going.
Yeah, no wonder you have like a vintage store, bro. Like you just get like of everything, bro. Your mind doesn't have to focus on one type of thing. Those are all the questions I have. I mean, we just talked about goals. Like for you, 2023 and beyond, like what are things that you want to accomplish within yourself, within as a being a business owner, just in general?
Yeah. Okay. So this we can relate the two. So my
Yeah.
goal would be to get to the point where the business is still being very successful, but I am to the point where I'm able to focus and I have my own life outside of the store.
So you want to basically stray away a little bit more from the
Not
shop and
necessarily
just
stray away. Like I don't want to stray away. Like I'm still going to be putting in the same effort, but it's
right.
more about just putting in the effort that's needed.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't need to go over and beyond to do all
Mhm.
of this stuff when it's like for me, my problem is I focus so much on the future. Like I'm focused
Yeah.
so much on like a month ahead from now. I need to just be focusing on like make sure you have the stuff done to get through today, and then
Mhm.
you can do it again tomorrow.
Mm.
Instead of being in this place where it's like, I want my next month to be planned out so I have
Right.
no stress when it's like, why do I even do that in the first place? Because I can't even go a week going on schedule. Like something gets fucked up at some point
Yeah,
where it's
exactly.
like you're just hurting yourself by trying to
Mhm.
do that. Focus on what you gotta do today, and that's all you need to do.
Wow. That's very different from like a lot of people, that I've gotten the chance to talk to where it's like they are looking ahead and ahead. And it's like at some point it's gonna those things that you are looking ahead, you might accomplish them, but you might not accomplish them in the way that you plan on doing it.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that I think a lot of people have a problem with too is they set like super high expectations for certain
Right.
things. I thought we were gonna get here way different than how we got here,
Exactly.
but I
Yeah.
don't really care because we're
Yeah.
here. Like I don't
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how we got here, you know? It's
Right.
like as long as you get there. That's
Yeah.
how I look at it. There are certain things about the store that didn't work 2 years ago, but now they work great.
Mhm.
It's like sometimes the timing is just wrong. Sometimes you're doing it just not exactly the right way. And like I think for me, it's all about trial and error. Doing something once, if it doesn't work, you just do it again a different way until you figure out a way that it works.
Right. That's good. I think we should end it off on that. That's good.
All right, cool with me.
But well, I don't have much else to say. You got any final words? Where can the people find you? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're at Single Stitch. We're located at 214 State Street, right under the Orpheum. Other than that, I can't thank anybody enough for all the appreciation and the support that we've had since we moved here. I mean, I have felt more at home in Madison than I have felt at all pretty much throughout my life, I guess besides my actual home. But like I love it here, you know, and
Yeah.
there's nothing I don't really have anything bad to say, you know. Like I
Mhm.
appreciate everybody constantly supporting, and I guess just one thing is like you can talk to us. We're like 20-year-old dudes. We're just
Yeah.
regular ass people.
Yeah.
Don't act like we're on some podium all the time. I hate that.
Oh my the amount of people man, being the 10% off picture, bro, on our website, and the amount of people like, "I've seen you on the website." I'm like, "Dude." Like, I don't really I'm just like,
Whatever.
"Alright, bro." Like, I'm also here to help you, like, buy
Yeah.
shoes, you know what I mean? Like
No, yeah. That's one thing. It's like half of my friends that I've made, shit, almost all of them, almost all the friends I've made since moving to Madison were originally customers.
yeah.
Like they started off as somebody who came into the store to buy something,
Mhm.
and now we have a bonfire at my house every weekend, you know,
Right.
with the same people. It's like,
That's
I don't know.
fire.
If anybody wants to skate or go fish, like I have a Instagram, just DM me, you know, like I'm regular ass dude.
Alright. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Of course. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Once again, I'm your host, Andrew, and I want to thank Mitch for taking the time to speak with me today, and to Sam Wallner for creating the music you heard on today's episode. This episode was about a unique perspective into the fashion space through someone that operates in the vintage space. So if you know anyone that is interested in vintage and how it continues to play a role in the industry, share with them this episode. You can find me and the shop on Instagram at Andrew Inamoto and at _August Shop. And find August located in 414 State Street, Madison, Wisconsin, or on august-shop.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the August Forum.